It's very broad for us because actually there's different applications in different divisions. So when we talk about our communications division, where our 911 center is, we use GIS to help locate, to help dispatch resources to particular calls and actually locate those calls. So people, about 70% of our calls right now are cell phones, and the cell phone gives us a latitude and longitude location. So it allows the telecommunicator to see what the closest unit is, because our units also have GPS units in them, and they're tracked in a computerized map. So when you talk about GIS, maintaining those maps and looking at those maps is very important to get resources as quickly as we can to emergency calls. And we're real proud of the fact that the Department of Public Safety has saved about 16 lives based upon that kind of philosophy, getting those resources to emergencies as quickly as we can. And GIS is a big part of that area. The second part is the patrol function. In the patrol function, one of the things that we started several years ago is looking at crime and where it is, both temporally and geographically. So patrol units that normally randomly used to patrol now focus their efforts in high crime areas based on the GIS data. So the GIS data gives us those locations, and we've had a substantial drop in crime because officers have been able to go to those areas where crime is, and they see that the crime real time. So every day when they come in, their computer screen pops up and it shows the locations of the crimes in their particular sectors, and they're able to direct their patrols to those areas. And we think that that's one of the reasons that we've seen some reductions in crime. The third area is criminal investigations. Criminal investigations uses it to associate where particular crimes occur. We've used it to look at repeat offenders. We've looked at, other different kinds of things. So when they're working criminal cases, they're able to look at it in a broad view and actually locate offenders, repeat offenders, and the proximity to those crimes. They're actually look at different crimes and see if they're related together, different burglaries, how many burglaries in this particular area, how close they are to each other. So those things help them in their investigation. The first is the response time, obviously. Being able to get to that location, get the appropriate resources to the location as quickly as we can has vastly improved, and a lot of that is because of GIS. Whether it's the GPS unit in the vehicle, whether it's the telecommunicator looking out on the screen, whether it's the supervisor that sees where the units are and distributes those based upon the needs of the community. The second way really is in being able to plan. And by plan, I mean when officers come in the morning and they're doing their shift briefing, they're able to target those resources where crime occurs most. And we already know from a number of studies that about 40 to 50% of crime occurs at 5% of addresses. So being able to plot those addresses, look at those addresses, and then target the resources in those addresses has really helped us in reducing crime in Jacksonville. We're on the cusp of being able to predict crime, to be able to look at how crime occurs, enter those factors in, and then map it, and then use patrol resources to target those areas that we anticipate crime is going to occur. We already can sort of do that with traffic crashes. One of the things that we've looked at is traffic crashes in particular areas and being able to direct our enforcement efforts in those areas and reduce those crimes. So high crash areas based on the map data allows us to target those resources. So the future holds, I really think, in those predicting models as we move more broad from traffic into other crimes, robberies, rapes, murders, larcenies, burglaries, the more serious crimes.
We use the GIS data to essentially plan our responses, to identify and analyze areas that need improved responses with regards to response times and things of that nature, and also helps us with hazard mitigation planning and identifying hazard risk analysis and things of that nature. GIS is, I still say it's relatively new, especially in the world of fire and emergency services. I mean, fire and emergency services organizations or first response agency organizations have been using GIS for a number of years now, but I still say it's relatively new because I think there's a lot of applications in GIS that we have yet to discover or yet to be able to maximize our efficiency. We use the data currently to identify, again, like I said, the areas of, for example, like floodplain mapping, things of that nature. We can identify areas of risk where residents or businesses may be at risk for flooding, potential flooding, and the scientists behind the work, the geologists, the science behind the GIS databases is really come a long ways from what it was. And prior to having this information, it was basically firefighters thumbing through a map trying to make sure that they had the right location, using 3-ring binders that were intruding the space in the fire trucks that keep us from having life-saving equipment. Which that was life-saving equipment, and so we were having to use map books and referring to maps and having to draw circles on maps and things of that nature. So with the technology we have today, it's a tremendous asset for our operations. It makes us much more efficient with regards to emergency response and life savings. Yeah, I think GIS is we're starting it as an organization nationwide. GIS is allowing us to help move more towards response modeling and response planning, especially with regards to trying to get into communities and identifying types of calls. If we're seeing a trend of types of calls in particular segments or of the population or particular segments of the community from a geographic standpoint, then we can go in and focus our efforts for preventing events like that. Now, for example, if we recognize a particular area where there's a high rate of mortality with regards to heart attacks, then we can go in and focus our efforts on education on how to prevent heart attacks, healthy eating, those sorts of things. If we have an area where we have juveniles starting fires, grass fires, and of course, much greater than that would be a structure fire, then we can go into those particular areas and hone in our resources on trying to identify or having identified those, addressing those particular situations. Because we've got the training, we've got the information available to us. It's a matter of hitting those target groups so that we're a much more efficient organization. And this is one of the things that we don't use very often, fortunately, but the city has this program in place called Connect CTY that we recommend all of our citizens, both the city and the county, to register for. And what the Connect CTY does is allows us to be able to essentially draw a circle on a map, or using other software that we use in the Fire and Emergency Response Service called Aloha, which basically allows us to be able to plot plumes or be able to use meteorological data and GIS data together, and to be able to diagram out or to define how a hazardous material might be moving with wind currents and things of that nature. And then we can notify those residents by basically drawing a circle on a map and punching a few buttons, and it'll automatically call every one of those residents and warn them of the dangers that's potentially about to arise upon them. So it's a great technology, and we're glad to have it, and it certainly will help us deliver better service to the citizens of Jacksonville. Well, now we use computers as a primary, which basically has real-time data from 911 when the call is dispatched, and the dispatchers enter that information in the computer. That information goes automatically to the screens on the computers in the trucks. And what happens is with the GIS database, with AVL technology, with our stations being located geographically throughout the city, they have assigned response districts. Well, before AVL technology, it didn't matter where our units were at, because our units don't always stay in the station. They're always out throughout the day doing hydrant maintenance and pre-planning and fire inspections and things of that nature, training. So their units are generally out on the roads throughout the period of a day. And so not being co-located within the station, if they're out of quarters in their response area somewhere, they may wind up getting dispatched to a call that's completely across their response district. So, I mean, there's going to be some response time issues there. Well, with the AVL technology, what that does is it identifies that there might be a unit closer, even though it's not in that assigned response district. It might be closer to the call, and it'll automatically identify that information for the dispatchers and recommend that unit for response. And so our response units get there in a much quicker manner. And so that's really a great tool that we have through GIS with that AVL technology. And so, again, there's many applications that we have available to us through GIS, using all of them through, in combination with the hazmat response, hazard mitigation planning, and identifying hazardous risk areas or hazardous risks within areas within our community. And that response information is really critical for our operations.
And I use GIS at least once a week in my operations. I'm over the field operations division, so we do a lot of community service things, and in that we do crime analysis for neighborhoods, and we do crime analysis for problems that are happening in communities. So we use GIS to create maps and actually show us where our hot spots are, where our problem areas are, so that we can more directly impact those areas and try to alleviate the crime problems in those areas. I also use it as the projects coordinator and using National Night Out for creating my maps for any type of planned event for our incident command system, so we know where all the different pieces of the puzzle for those events are. And we use GIS to create those maps and media services to enlarge those so that we can present them to the public as necessary. The crime analysis part and actually seeing what the problems are, GIS is an integral part of that, because to look at a spreadsheet is one thing, but to actually be able to look at it on a map with a heat map to show you where the centralized issues are just at a quick glance makes it so much easier for us to actually do our operations. GIS staff here at Jacksonville has always been very customer service oriented. It almost seems like they drop what they're doing whenever we call for something. I know that they don't. They have other projects that they're working on, but they're always able to fit us in and take our calls and get us a quick turnaround on projects. And if we do have something that is more of a priority, they are very obliging to help us with that.
And I use GIS every day at work to find out information of just about anything has to do with infrastructure within the city. If a citizen calls in to ask about a particular parcel, if there's water available, sewer available, if there's questions about stormwater, elevations of the lot, really any bit of information that we have in the system, we can give it to them pretty quickly. Well, it's a huge database of information, so without that, we would have to go through files, a lot of paperwork, and it could take hours or days to come up with the information. Whereas with the GIS, it's just within a matter of minutes.
Yes, it does. When a resident calls and has questions about the zoning or is their property in a floodplain, we will use the GIS to see where the property is located, how close those boundaries may be to their properties, to their houses. When they want to do expansions, we do utilize GIS in terms of whether they could or could not conceivably do an expansion to a house. It's definitely made things a lot quicker and easier for us to put our fingers on information such as property owners, the tax acreage, when the structures were built, because that database, when we identify a property, it pulls from both city and county databases and provides us with a lot of information that would have taken a lot longer to have, gotten previously. Sure, I think that you can see improvements that have happened just over the last 10 years. And I would certainly expect this technology to continue to advance and make it more user-friendly, more so than it already is today. We have a good GIS staff. We work closely with them and have for many years. In fact, we in planning and permitting used to have a GIS staff member. And they, due to the demand and the growth and the different departments and citizens using the GIS that's now available for them to use, there was a strong enough demand that they actually created a GIS division within our ITS department and has grown to 3 people from 1 just 14 years ago. It's just a useful tool that makes our jobs a lot easier. It's available on the city's website. Counties and now cities have their own GIS programs, and I would suggest that anybody that is at home after City Hall may be closed, if they want to know information about, well, how big is my property, or anything that's offered on GIS, where park sites are, who owns property, that information can be found on the city's GIS website. And anybody that's wanting specifically as far as it relates to planning and permitting information, get the zoning information from the city's GIS program if you're within the city's jurisdiction versus somebody else's GIS database, because our database for our area will be the most current and up to date. So I would stress people to look there when it is something they're looking for.
GIS helps us, the Stormwater Division, basically on a daily basis. In order for the city to comply with our stormwater permit, our NPDES permit, we had to capture and map all of our MS4s, which are very large concrete pipes that exit out of development, especially the downtown Jacksonville area, and empty stormwater into the New River. All of those had to be captured and mapped. And then after those were captured, we had to actually capture all of the storm drains and catch basins within the city limits and our ETJ, which were between 8,000 and 9,000 of them. And we would mark them with little markers that says this drains to the New River, so that they would understand that it doesn't go to our sanitary sewer, that anything on the road goes straight into our watershed. Another aspect that we use GIS every single day is maps. When we have an illicit discharge, that's our #1 priority. We've got to know where the oil or the sewage spill, where it's going, what watershed it's affecting, and how many pipes I need to block off before it actually gets to the watershed. So using maps is something that we use every single day, and without GIS, I would not have that capability. So we've got storm drains, we've got MS4s, we've got illicit discharges, and then one of the things that we've done this year is we are mapping the entire watershed within Onslow County. So you have a Southwest Creek watershed, you have a Northeast Creek watershed, and most people don't realize that these small tributaries or small ditches are actually a very large component of that watershed. So we're trying to get the message out that everybody's backyard, everybody's tributary counts when it drains into the New River watershed. And this new watershed map will be an excellent example of how it's all tied together, the entire river, the entire system flows together. The technology, sometimes a little mind-boggling for me. I'm just glad that it all works. When it doesn't work, I call and go, help. The handheld Trimble, you know, you've got to make sure you've got enough satellites, you're not underneath tree cover. So we've had a very sharp learning curve on how to operate some of the technology, but the staff, whenever we had a stumbling block, all we did was call and they would immediately come and fix it for us or help us. And we use computers every day. Again, we're pulling up maps, whether it's a handheld map or a computer on, a map on the computer. When I get a citizen's complaint that says, my backyard is not draining or the ditch is not draining, I'm actually able to pull up on the map their backyard to see what's upstream of them, what's downstream of them, and without GIS, I would not have that capability. The staff has always been very wonderful to work with.
GIS, is a very valuable tool. Some of the things that personally have used GIS for is to, one, display graphically, the conditions of various streets in the city. I mean, there's a scoring system that evaluates the condition of pavement, and with those scores, then you're able to assign different colors to the different scoring ranges, and then print a map that shows the overall condition of your streets and graphically demonstrates, which streets are in best condition, which streets are the worst condition. Similar uses have to do with where you have problems with your water and sewer system. If in fact you're able to record in the GIS files the locations where you have actually gone out and made repairs to water and sewer lines, you're able to identify lines that have a high frequency of leaks, and identify lines that are lines that you really should look closely at replacing. We just building a new fire station, or actually a replacement station for station number 2. The existing location of station 2 is not in an ideal location from the standpoint of serving the biggest portion of the city that's possible. And so with the GIS, we're able to identify locations, and using a sort of a formula that's incorporated in GIS, you're able to determine how long the response time would be from various locations to neighborhoods in the community. And so what you can do with that is basically sort of zero in the most effective locations for siting a fire station. So, water and billing accounts. Been able to basically color code on a map properties have water accounts, property have sewer accounts, property have water and sewer accounts. When you put them on a map, you can find out, for example, in the neighborhood where everybody should be on water and sewer, you can find actual accounts where they're only being built for one or the other. So you can actually use that to sort of audit your records in a very, very straightforward way. Well, you would certainly take a lot more work. I mean, I guess before GIS, some of those uses that I identified, you would probably find yourself coloring with a magic marker on a map the locations where some of those activities occurred, like where the water leaks and that. And this way, you can just query the data file and mark. The printer can mark those locations for you. So really, it's a time-saving tool, as well as, I think, a tool that basically allows you to quickly print some preliminary information, and then based on that, you can sort of identify additional information you'd like to see and add it to the map and get a more complete picture. Otherwise, you would just have to do that. Be all done by hand. The GIS is intended for the users to generate a lot of this stuff. I mean, our GIS staff is there, but they probably spend more time generating things that a user could generate if they would spend the time to learn the capabilities of the system and then do it themselves. And what that does is always, in other words, by the users not doing that themselves, what they're doing is tying up the GIS technicians' time, where they could be spending it using, they could be developing, different algorithms and different queries that would then allow even more use of the GIS. I mean, but they're very knowledgeable people. They understand the GIS system. What they don't understand is how the information that a user needs, and that's why if the user understands how to query the GIS system, the more familiar that the staff gets with the capabilities of a program, the more they learn about it. The more they learn about it, the more productive they become. And the other thing is that they also, as the more productive and more knowledgeable they are, the less demand they have to place on the GIS staff, who are then available to, I think, to even further improve our ability to use these systems. But you can obviously see my thrust is users need to be more capable at using some of the tools that we have with the assistance of the IT staff. But the IT staff is supposed to keep those systems running, and the users are supposed to, get the information they want out of them.
The way I work with GIS every day, and it happens to be every day because the NC 811 system that was put in place, we have various people who put in tickets who then who would like to either dig or do some kind of work out here in the city, and they need to know where our fiber is located. So by using GIS, I can look at a map, tell where we have the fiber, and determine if I need to physically go out there and mark it, or just update it and say that it's out of our area. So that saved time and money for the city. So another way we use GIS is whenever we are tracking our assets within the city, we're able to hover over a map and pull up information on those devices. And that helps out greatly without going through a bunch of paperwork, trying to figure out what device has what, why it's there, when we need to replace it. Without GIS, we would have to physically go to locations and observe the sites that we're working with and have to keep going to these areas. With GIS, we can just look at a map, see what we have, see where we need to start with a project, where we need to end with it, and what future developments we can do as well. We're able to utilize what they can provide to us much more efficiently, than we would just trying to find this information on our own. The ArcMap, products like that they know how to use really helps the city in creating these maps and interactive maps and such.
I actually use it for all of my customers. I use it when I'm dealing with their beer and wine licenses. I use it when I'm dealing with any type of permits that they're going to get. I have to use it for that. Or if they're changing their business. They're doing a business name change or ownership. So yeah, I use it with every step that I do. And I love it. Oh my gosh, it would be so much harder because I depend on GIS for as far as the ownership. I have to verify the ownership. I have to verify, when I'm trying to find an address. For some reason, people do not know where they're going to be working at. Oh yeah, it's right down the street or it's right around the corner. Or it's located by this place. And then I'll pull up my map. Okay, this right here is what I have. Is it somewhere in the vicinity of this area? And then it helps a lot. I mean, I'd go there. First thing I do in the morning is pull up my GIS. To be honest with you, what I used to use when I was in the water department for 12 years. And when we were over there, I guess it was called GeoBlade, and there was another ArcMap that it was called. Somewhat similar. And I did get uses out of it. But what I have now, the ArcGIS, I guess, is so much better. I guess how times go and we advance and then they change the stuff. It's to me, it makes it so much, it's friendlier to use. I can understand it. And I love how they break it down. I mean, it's just, I can't say enough about it. I really do love using it. Oh, I love the GIS staff. Oh my gosh, Reddy is on my top of the list of people I will call whenever I have any problems. Reddy, Heather, I love them to death. Chris, they're great.
I am the one that creates leadership and vision for next steps in GIS in City of Jacksonville. We moved into more precise utility mapping. We georeferencing as-builts. We're trying to basically create an environment where we will be able to create a very detailed and accurate hydrological model for the city utilities that helps make management decision on investment, where the infrastructure needs to be improved, more accurate, and hopefully at the end of the day make better decisions. Wiser spending, more precise definition of where the capital investments on utilities are necessary, especially with defining a location of where people live and in the city and where the services need more improvement or any type of investment. So almost everybody in GIS department has a little bit different background in their education. I think if somebody would like to pursue a career in GIS, needs to have a good statistical ability, analysis, being able to accurately acquire data, whether it's from heads-up digitizing or using global positioning system. I think a GIS has an endless potential. It's hard to see where GIS technology may be in 5 years. I think best is to evaluate it by looking 5 years back, and where GIS was only available to a certain group of people that were professionals in it. Now we have GIS on cell phones, in the cars. Pretty much everybody can ask question where you want to go and route me there. At the end of the day, GIS can be used to more efficiently deliver services to citizens.
The GIS system is most important to us in dispatch for vehicle locations and locations of different address points. We use it for boundary locations. We use it to obtain information on a site where we might not have callback information for a parcel owner. In case of break-in, house fire, we can use the GIS to pull that information up as well. Actually, with the new GIS system, we've set it up into zones. So our patrol units the city is broken into different zones, and we have patrol officers assigned to each zone. So when a 911 call comes in, it automatically transfers the address information into our CAD system, and then the CAD system pulls up the address point where the call is coming from. So we can see the vehicle locations, the patrol units actually where they're located, and we can dispatch a patrol unit, the closest unit, immediately. And our call response time for an emergent call this past week was 2 minutes and 23 seconds from time to dispatch to unit arrival, and that is an excellent feature for the GIS for dispatch. It's very hard, especially if we have calls that we can't return, like on cell phones. We can pinpoint longitude and latitude with the GIS, so we can actually pinpoint where a caller is coming from if they're not sure where their location. Without the GIS mapping, our response times would probably be anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes without the vehicle locators, and so that's a dramatic reduction in response time for the citizens. Our GIS team has helped us tremendously. We've had trouble with a few address points, and we've addressed that even if we've had to go to OSSI to correct them. And the GIS team has been there and helped us tremendously to overcome any obstacles that we had.
GIS to us is an asset management tool that we use to keep a database of our lines, our inventory, the number of hydrants we have, the number of valves we have in the system, how if we have a water outage or a problem where we can isolate to minimize the number of customers that are affected. They give us a lot of maps for field work and knowing, pinpointing the exact location of all of our infrastructure. If we did not have GIS, we would have to manually go and dig through paper files and try to research and find this data the old school way of manually pulling out maps with paper copies and going out in the field with paper copies and trying to match things up that way is very time consuming. It's not efficient, it's not effective, and it would waste a lot of our resources. The GIS staff that we currently have are very well educated, are well versed in GIS. They're very helpful. You can go to them and within a few clicks they can help you navigate to the information you're trying to find, help you do your queries, and basically utilize the data that's in there, and so you don't have to waste a lot of time doing a lot of research.
And I use the GIS, a lot of their systems actually for the purpose of billing. I do stormwater billing. I do GIS mapping for sewer locates, water locate lines. We've even GPSed our actual Itron meters to if a customer wants to locate on a meter, I'm able to tell them it's closest to your driveway, it's closest to your tree. It's just from looking on the maps. I utilize the maps for the stormwater increments, the number of units that we're charging a customer. Well, because we have the maps, we're actually able to take the impervious units strictly off from the flyovers that were provided for the stormwater units. You know, the infrastructure in Jacksonville is growing so big and so fast. It's hard to get all the actual units together if you actually had to go out there and measure them. We'd have to have a whole nother body that would have to go out there and physically measure the impervious surface area of each individual parcel. It's pretty big. The GIS maps are really important to the billing process because of the fact that we have to have a backup. You know, when I charge a customer a number of units of stormwater, I have to have a backup. Without a map to actually give that customer to explain the number of units that's being charged, we would physically have to send somebody out to a location and measure the parcel to see how much, and then have to measure the impervious surface area that's on there. So it's really, really important that I have the GIS systems. Metering. I use the metering for a customer locate for a meter. You know, a customer wants to know where their meter is, or even one of the meter readers. I'm actually able to look on my map because we've GPS them inside the ARC map. I'm actually able to give them a little bit of location of where their meter is standing, or a better location anyway. The sewer and the water lines, I'm able to tell, is this county water and city sewer? Is this city water, county sewer? The lines are all available for me to see. I can tell you at your parcel which lines you're located in. So it's real important.
We use GIS in a lot of different ways, actually. Probably first and foremost is the mapping component. You know, that's a very strong capability with GIS. The ability to graphically show, you know, people that you're working with, whether they be other government employees or whether they be citizens, you know, the types of transportation projects that you're planning for. New roadways, transit routes, etc. You know, people respond better to looking at maps rather than written words or even spoken. So you can point to things, points of reference where people are very familiar with, and that gives them good context in what you're trying to talk about when scoping a transportation project. You can talk about transportation projects, but until you show them on a map, people really don't know what you're talking about. So just having that ability to point to a map, all those points of references, that really helps people understand what you're talking about and what you're trying to achieve.
We utilize GIS quite a bit in our department for a variety of reasons. One of those is for our participants. We're able to actually use the data to see where some of our participants are living and where they come from. So for example, for maybe some of our sports and our athletics, we can see where parents are having to drive in from. So if we can coordinate where they're practicing, it's a great benefit to the citizens that we can use GIS and that data. Other ways we use it is our park development. We can use GIS to look at our boundaries and what's within our parks, as well as tracking what's in the parks. We've gone so far as to actually look at the trees and monitoring what we have within the city utilizing the GIS technology. It's great. The data collection alone on GIS is a huge efficiency for us. It allows us to go into a software program, pull that data out, and utilize it immediately. I wouldn't even begin to imagine how much time and effort it would take to try and manually gather data of where people might live and then map them so that we can see where some of our participants are in the community. So it saves a lot of time, it's a great efficiency for all of us in the department. They're great to work with. I have called them on many occasions, everything from a map that Heather might do, or Chris has helped us in the past with a training for the staff. That's another thing that we were able to utilize, and just some basic training for the staff to understand how to look at some of the software. So they all do a great job, and they're always very helpful, the GIS staff is.
We use GIS in a couple of ways. One main one is maps. We have 152 miles of roads in our city. In addition, though, there's 32 other miles that we perform some minor maintenance occasionally for the Department of Transportation. Those maps, though, serve us in more ways than one. An example is street sweeping. When the guys go out and sweep for the day, when they come in, we have a map on the wall that tracks every area they've swept. So we'll do that, and sometimes we have a map for every month. When a complete citywide route has been swept, we'll take that map down and put up a new one. So the maps provided to us are very, very good at what we have to do. So if some resident calls in, wants to know, when are you going to sweep our street, then we can find out and tell them exactly the last time we were there without going in and looking through 20, 30, 40, 50 sheets of paper. So they have enabled us to break our city down into about 9 different sections. We have over 100 miles of drainage ditches in the city, and we've broken them down in 9 sections so that when we perform our maintenance, we take them a section at a time. And when we complete them, we know exactly what we've done, where we've been. And again, if the citizen asks, we can tell them exactly. So GIS has been good for us. And there's other means that we mark our drainage pipes, our drainage routes through the mapping system. We have every ditch labeled and numbered through the GIS, which if we didn't have those things, we would be, I'd say, haphazardly or like throwing a dart in a map, figuring out which ditch to clean next. But they've been helpful. Oh, the technology itself is wonderful. And I know the county even has a wonderful system too that we coordinate with from time to time. But the people are just about like the rest of our employees. Wonderful to work with, so cooperative and enthusiastic too about their job. Reddy and his team in there are always helpful, always willing to stop what they're doing to either put us on a good schedule or get our maps for us. And I couldn't ask for more.
Locating meter boxes, the water meters, we use it to locate. Since we read it with the AMR now, which is just a drive-by, grass grows over the meter boxes or construction comes through and covers up the meter boxes, then we use the GIS to locate it again. Yeah, they train us on how to do it, and then we go out in the field and we got questions, they'll walk us through it, and then they upload it, and then it goes up to one of the girls up there at City Hall, and if we have a question about where a meter's at, they'll bring up a picture and we can either come down there or they'll try and explain it to us from what they see as to where the meters are at.
GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. Here in the city, the GIS is a great technology that's used it's used within multiple departments, and like this police uses for crimes analysis, engineering uses for utilities, and planning uses to plan their developments. City manager uses for the big idea projects and things like that. We do work with pretty much every department, and then we make maps, and there's a lot of technology behind the maps. So we, back over there in IT, we keep that on the servers and maintain it. The data is there out. It's public information, and it's in different formats, like in maps, like you said, in maps and different kind of digital sources. And for maps and stuff like that, what we do is like try to digitize them, make them some kind of format that you can bring into the computer, and then convert that data to meaningful formats, like which is the GIS. And, the beauty of it is these layers have those attributes, which is the information behind those layers. So there's a tabular database where this address point is not only a spatial dot on a map, but it has information behind it. So when people are looking, they're searching, so they put in an address and search, it knows that dot has this address, and it's taking the map and zooming into that location. They come back to us and say, hey, we're stuck here at this point with this project. And then I'll be like, jumping in and say, hey, we got this great technology, I'm going to show what it does, and then they just love it. And after that, it makes their job easy, and it helps them and it helps me, keeping them happy, because my customers are citizens as well as city staff. So. But the whole idea is, like, we have this so much technology in the city, and I have a lot of users, and I've trained myself, and other GIS staff have been out and trained people to use the GIS, but we want more people to use it so that we do a good job.
Well, at the city manager level, we're often involved in economic development. So the ability to take a neighborhood and identify everything from property boundaries to assess value all the way through home ownership or property ownership is essential. Also, the ability to use GIS as a tool to help identify those types of conditions and land uses that we have. Whether it's an elevation that you need, whether it's some type of overlay for a floodplain. GIS is one of the essential tools of helping us with economic development out of the manager's office. Well, before GIS, obviously we had a completely different technology. It was very difficult. Most of it was paper, most of it was maps. You were not able to actually access the information immediately. If I was going to have a meeting with a potential client, I had to order a paper map 3 or 4 days in advance. Many times the paper maps were not actually in the ownership of the city, they were in the ownership of a surveying company, so you had to go through that information. Also, the ability to transmit these electronically, where I can pull up data and send it to a person in Florida that we're dealing with on relocating a business here. Or if we're dealing with someone who has a building permit issue, we're able to use the electronic part and add the GIS component and ship it to their architect. That saves everybody on both sides of the equation significant time and, equally important, money. Well, there's no question, most of the information here at the city is available through public records request. While not all of the information available is public record because we cannot create new information, on the other hand, if we've already created it, it is a public record. Oftentimes we will have people in other parts of the country or deployed soldiers, Marines, sailors to contact us and ask for information about their property. They may be trying to relocate. They need information that will help them in listing or even selling their property. We use GIS in so many ways to continue our partnership with the military. Well, there's no question, equipment is only as good as the operator. If you don't have the technically competent staff to accomplish the many things that GIS can do, then the GIS investment has not been a good one. Fortunately, the city of Jacksonville is blessed with an outstanding GIS department. We believe that that investment is every day returning a great return to the taxpayers of this community.